Thank you so much, Sophie. There's so much going on. And literally this last week, we've just started a new sermon series called Follow Me. So you can log in each week and follow this series with us. And we're going to continue that this morning. So I'm just going to read from the Bible, from the book of John. And we're in chapter 1, verse 14 to 18. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. John bore witness about him and cried out, "This was he of whom I said, 'He who comes after me ranks before me, because he was before me.' And from his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, and the only God who is at the Father's side, he has been known."
Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. And listen, if you are trying church, a particular welcome to you. I hope you're having a brilliant time with us. My name's Philip. I lead the team here at King's Church. I'm really glad to be able to speak to you for a few moments from the Bible. I don't know if you caught that last reading that Jason read to us from the book of John. John makes quite a punchy claim, doesn't he, about the person of Jesus. He says this, he's writing in about 85 AD in the Middle East, and he says, Jesus Christ came full of grace and truth. Full of grace and truth. And listen, if you're in any doubt that Jesus did actually claim that about himself, Jesus said himself, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." These are big claims. And maybe you'd agree with me that I think we're living in a time, aren't we, right now, where perhaps the concept of truth has maybe never been more contentious, should I say, than it is at the moment. Maybe like me, you kind of wonder about these things, and perhaps amidst politics and big tech algorithms, maybe you wonder, is what I'm reading or seeing or hearing actually true? Perhaps you wonder like me that often people seem to now refer to my truth rather than the truth. And maybe you wonder, are there any figures in authority who will speak the truth and live by the truth and who we can trust? And of course, when it comes to a religious person, whether it's a founder or a follower, when claims of exclusive truth are being made, that can get a little bit sticky, can't it? To put it mildly, it can seem, when religious people like me make these claims around exclusive truth, it can seem perhaps excluding or intolerant. And listen, Christians have got to be honest. There have been times over the last 2,000 years when we have, in the name of the truth, we have been excluding or intolerant or worse, and we have to own that. But is it not also true to say that when it comes to truth, truth is by definition exclusive in and of itself? Any truth claim is exclusive. Let me give you an example. There's often an example given that when it comes to exclusive truth, people say, listen, there's no one way to God or to ultimate reality or to truth. There's lots of ways. It's like a mountain. And rather there being one way up the mountain, there's a whole number of ways, but they all arrive at the top together. They all reach the same ultimate destination of ultimate reality or truth or God. And of course, yeah, that sounds a lot more inclusive and a lot more tolerant. But if you think about it, it's probably just as exclusive as the original type of claim, because to make a claim like that is still a truth claim. Actually, it's excluding anyone that thinks that there is one way up the mountain to God, or there are a number of ways up the mountain to ultimate reality. It's just as exclusive, but just in a different way. The reality is that all truth claims, I would suggest, are going to exclude in some ways. That's the definition of truth, or the nature of truth. So the issue in part is not just the claim that the truth is, but also it's the way in which it's made. It's the character and the attitude that comes alongside an exclusive truth claim. And Jesus Christ, it is said, came full of grace and truth. Let me just tell you a short story, if I may, from my own life. I used to be a teacher before I worked for a church. And in my very first year as a teacher, I was newly qualified, didn't really know very much. And that reality became extremely evident in one particular lesson that was going downhill. The kids were not engaging. They certainly weren't learning. Their behavior was going downhill. I was getting more and more frustrated. And right at the end of the lesson, as they were about to trail out of this pretty average lesson, to put it mildly, rather than me, I guess, just kind of writing it off as a daft lesson I could learn from, I lost my temper. I really kind of lost my rag and gave them both barrels. I was so frustrated. And as that kind of moment died down, you can imagine it was a horrible atmosphere in the classroom at the end. And the kids were either a bit sad, a bit stunned. And as they began to sort of trail out, it's like, oh, there's this awful kind of moment. And then to make it worse, I saw that as they trailed out of the door, the deputy head of my school was standing at the door. His name was Ben. And I was like, oh man, what's he going to think? What's he going to think of me? What's he going to think of my teaching? And then he came into the room, so I was clearly going to say something. Maybe at best it's going to be a ticking off, and at worst, who knows? But to my surprise, he said a few words that have kind of always stuck with me ever since. He said this. He said, Philip, I can see that lesson didn't go as you hoped. Are you okay? And those words have always kind of stuck with me. And in this moment, they kind of felt like what I'm trying to describe. Grace and truth came together in the form of a person. Ben told me the truth. That lesson didn't go as you hoped. Correct. That lesson did not go as I hoped. I did not come into teaching to teach rubbish lessons and shout at kids. But also, he said it with grace. Are you okay? In other words, you're not just to us an employee who needs to perform better, but you're a person who maybe is struggling. And he was right. I was that week. And that was partly a reflection of that. Ben personified the two things together. He told me the truth about where I'd got to and how far I'd fallen short, but he did it with grace. And I didn't deserve that grace. I was an employee who wasn't performing very well. But that's the nature of grace. It's undeserved compassion and kindness. And Ben kind of personified it in a moment for a time. Jesus Christ, it is said, fully embodied grace and truth. He came full of grace and truth. I just would love to show you a short little video now. At King's Church, like loads of other churches around the world, we run something called Alpha. And Alpha really is just it's kind of a context, a forum, if you will, in which people come together from all kinds of worldviews and backgrounds and just discuss, watch a couple of films and discuss and ask questions and talk about really the big questions of life and of meaning and faith and so forth. And we ran a course this time last year almost in the very first lockdown on Zoom. And here's an excerpt from a conversation the other week between those people who came on that course last time round, Simon and Diran and Nikki in particular. And they're going to speak about their experiences doing Alpha. And I think you'll hear something of these themes of grace and truth coming through.
Everyone, it is so lovely to see you all. So for those who have just joined us from church, we should probably tell them that we went on a bit of an Alpha journey in March of last year, didn't we? And it was one of my highlights. So if it's all right, I'd love to ask you a few questions about the sort of journey we went on together. So Simon, Diran, maybe we can start with you. Why did you do Alpha?
I was just very interested to see what it was all about. I'd heard of it and just thought I'd really like to give it some of my time and see what it can do for me and what I can do for it, I suppose. And
for me, it's kind of very similar to what Simon said, but also I wanted to learn a bit more about, I guess, for me, Christianity, and just a bit more, I guess, more answers, which, to be honest, through the course, I learned a lot more than I actually thought I would.
Brilliant. How about you, Nikki? Why did you do Alpha?
For me, I was kind of looking for facts and evidence how Christianity had become sort of a global religion, and the kind of the very beginnings of Christianity is what I was looking for.
Brilliant. Tell me about your experience. What was your experience?
My experience was that doing it on a Zoom call had some benefits where we could dial in relatively comfortably and sort of have the discussions and go through the videos as well, which I found really helpful because it enabled me to kind of process some of my learning and ask the questions that I wanted to ask in a relatively safe space.
Brilliant. Simon, Diran, how about you? What were your experiences of Alpha?
I felt very comfortable being able to ask anything that I needed to. It was interesting hearing other people's perceptions and other people's experiences and thoughts. Wasn't over the moon about Zoom to begin with, and we did have the usual IT, like everyone has IT teething problems. But I think that didn't really stop anything. If I'm honest with you, the experience was still a very valuable one.
And I guess there were times where we sort of challenged you with certain questions, and you came back the week after. That was actually quite interesting as well. So it was like a two-way. It was a good interaction, I think, within the whole team.
So what's happened since for you both? What have you?
And I think from my point of view as well, the things we went throughout the course, I guess day to day, things, circumstances pop up, and you kind of do reflect a little bit on things which were said. So there are times where you can interlink your day-to-day life. Sometimes I do think back, and I think what we had discussed is this the reasons why we're doing this? So you do reflect a little, I would say, part of the core, what we learned to your daily life. So there are times when I did that, definitely.
Excellent. And how about you, Nikki? What happened on the course, and what have you done since?
Well, on the course, I said that I wanted to be a Christian and give my life to God, and that's what we've done this year. We've joined the life group at King's, so we've been meeting every Tuesday evening. We've been doing Bible studies, and that's been really helpful because our journey through Christianity has come on so much more since I did the Alpha course. I don't think we're all the way there yet. I've still got obviously lots to learn, lots to understand, but certainly the feeling of being connected and knowing God is much stronger than what it was before.
Fantastic. Ben, Rach, what would you say was your highlight of doing Alpha?
I think it's just always encouraging to me as a Christian to be reminded, as we look at some of the videos as well, is some of the evidence, and also things like the resurrection of Jesus, and just how strong the evidence for that is as well, because I think that's something that people often don't realize.
Yeah, and to be part of it, not just say, oh, you guys go off to Alpha, and we'll just say, that's been really lovely, and hear the journey they're on and sharing that. It's wonderful, and get to know Nikki and others. It's been priceless, really.
We really enjoyed it.
Well, it's so wonderful to see you all together again. And look, when we're out on this lockdown, we're going to have to get back together.
Alpha Online is a free course designed to give you the space and time to ask the big and often challenging questions about life, faith, and meaning. No filters, just honest discussion. To attend an Alpha Online, all you have to do is sign up and then join a weekly online call, all from the comfort of your home. Everything else is taken care of by your hosts. So feel free to pour yourself a drink, get comfy, get your laptop ready, and you are good to go. What have you got to lose? Try Alpha Online.
I just really enjoyed, not about you, listening into that conversation. And listen, our next online Alpha course starts on Wednesday, the 24th of February. We'd love you to consider just coming along to that introductory evening and hearing a bit more about it for yourself and seeing if it's something you want to do. And I loved about that conversation was that I think that kind of truth and grace theme was at play there. You could hear there was a desire for truth. Like, are there facts that are attached to this thing? Is there evidence that I can genuinely investigate and make some reasoned conclusions as a result of? And I also sensed there was a culture of grace in that room. It was okay to ask questions, to push questions back, to challenge. It was a safe place, someone said, to be able to do that. Grace and truth coming together. And as important as it is as to how the truth is professed and understood and investigated, of course, it's also important as to what the truth is. What is it that Jesus Christ was claiming to be and to do and to know? Well, let's just dig into that for these last few minutes. What did Jesus Christ actually claim about himself? And what do Christians believe about Jesus fundamentally? Well, I guess it boils down to this, that Jesus claimed, and Christians have believed for 2,000 years, that he was both man and God. Indeed, that he was God revealing himself as a human being. And as such, he knows the truth about the nature of humans, and he knows the truth about the nature of God. He knows the truth about the nature of humans and the truth about the nature of God. And when it comes to the truth about the nature of humans, some of the people have speculated about and written about and dreamt about and performed about for centuries. Really what Jesus said is pretty much what my friend or my deputy headmaster Ben said to me. Jesus points out in simple terms that human beings are both vulnerable and fallible. Are both valuable, I should say, and fallible. That's what Ben was basically saying to me. You're valuable and you're fallible. That's what Jesus says to us. Let me just look at those two things. Valuable. Jesus affirmed the enormous value that he placed and therefore God placed upon every human being. He knew and he affirmed what the Bible had always said, that we, human beings, every single one, are made in the image of God. That means that regardless of what we might do or how productive we are, actually there's a divine imprint marked, stamped upon us that means we have inherent value and worth. That's why, as an aside, we want to be part of this befriending service, the Bridge, that Sophie alluded to before. And not only because people who are lonely in our borough are worthy of empathy or sympathy, but because actually they've been marked with a divine imprint. They are of a beautiful, inexpressible worth to God, and therefore they are to us. And just as an aside, that way of thinking about the human being, every human being, was not the norm in the first century. The way that Jesus and the Christian church afterwards thought about the human being caused a revolution in how we think about human beings. It's why we have human rights today. You might expect me as a Christian pastor to say something like that, so don't take my word for it. I'll just quote you something that a guy called Luc Ferry, who's quite a renowned philosopher, he's an atheist, French guy operating today. He's written an interesting book called A Brief History of Thought. And he says this: it is quite clear that without this Christian reevaluation of the human person, of the individual as such, the philosophy of human rights to which we subscribe today would never have established itself. Jesus, God in human flesh, affirmed what God had always said about human beings, and it changed the world. And Jesus, when you look at his life, and perhaps you might consider coming with us on this series through the Gospel of John, as John shows us Jesus, you see Jesus just loves to be with people, bestowing God's value and God's delight and God's love upon people. In fact, Jesus, if you read the Gospels, particularly loves spending time with the people that nobody else thought were of any value or worth, or even were worth less and without value. Jesus loved doing that, especially in the first century. He loved spending time with such people. Those that were in poverty, those that were sick, those that were marginalized, those that were considered to be morally suspect, those that were of a different ethnic minority, those that were uneducated. Jesus loved being with those kinds of people. He knew that within every single human being there is a profound potential for beauty, and he affirmed it in an amazing, amazing way. I want to tell you this morning, Jesus Christ did not come to condemn the world, and nor do Christians, and nor do we, certainly, at King's Church. And I think we all know, don't we, that we look around us in the world and we see humanity, and at its best, it's capable of just profound beauty and creativity. All of us, I think, on a good day with a fair wind, our desire is to live noble and brave and generous lives. We look around in this pandemic and we probably we're all, I imagine, sad to see the passing of someone like Captain Sir Tom Moore. And we look at that man who I don't think was a believer and think, wow, in the 100th year of his life, he was able to kind of lift the spirits of a nation in some way, not to mention raise all that money for the NHS. Jesus, in God, as God, affirms the extraordinary value and beauty on the human being. But of course, as much as we are deeply valuable, and Jesus affirms that, he also says that we are deeply fallible. Because then about you, as much as you and I think, long to lead that noble and brave and generous life, if anything like me, we often fail to do so. Sometimes subtly, perhaps, and sometimes spectacularly. If we're really honest with ourselves, when we look within, we also see profound potential for darkness. I certainly do. Potential and capacity for selfishness and cowardice, to name but a few. And even if we're not honest about this, the Bible certainly is honest about this. In fact, the guy that essentially founded the Christian church after the resurrection of Christ, his name was Paul. He wrote large portions of the New Testament. He was really, really honest about this. This is him speaking about himself in a letter in the Bible called the Letter to the Church in Rome. He said this: "For I do not understand my own actions. For I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate. For I have the desire to do what is right, but not the ability to carry it out. For I do not do the good that I want. Don't know if you can identify with that at all. I know I can. You see, Jesus has the grace to tell us the truth about us, the whole truth about us. He doesn't just take our social media profile and read it straight back to us. He tells us the whole truth about who we are because of his grace. You see, I would suggest that in broad brushstrokes, most other, if you like, systems of thought will say something like, okay, you are over here, and you obviously want to be or need to be over here. So if you can just think in different ways or change how you act or change how you emotionally react to the world around you, then we can move you from A to B. Jesus Christ says, there is no way from A to B. Can't be done. I am the way. You need a person. Not a way or a new motivational way of thinking or a new structure of philosophical life. You need a person who can actually re-engineer and can rework your entire your entire framework. When my deputy head came into my classroom, he was a person that came in grace and in truth, and it changed things for me. We come to a person in Jesus Christ who is full of grace and truth. And if you read about him, my experience has been you encounter this utterly transcendent person. And of course, when a transcendent person full of grace and truth comes into our life, his light, his transcendence exposes our darkness. But Jesus doesn't do that to shame us or to condemn us or to expose us. He does that to forgive us and to completely transform us. The language the Bible uses when you become a Christian is you become a new creation. You get transformed by the person of Jesus Christ. Such is his grace and his truth. And ultimately, this incredible person, God in human form, full of grace and truth, he goes to the cross. And what he does on the cross is he takes on all of that darkness that we see in others, and if we're honest, we see in ourselves. He takes it all upon us, all upon himself. Things that we've done, the things that we've thought, the harmful experiences, as Rachel alluded to, that we've all experienced and have been done to us. He takes it all upon himself and he deals with it. And then the claim is he emerges from the tomb triumphant. He comes back to life again in order to give us forgiveness and life and give us a brand new start in God now and forever. Let me just finish with that comment that Ben made to me all those years ago, more than I care to remember, in the classroom. He said, things didn't work out as you hoped. Are you okay? And I want to say that to some of you today. I'm guessing 2020 didn't work out as you hoped. Are you okay? And maybe some of you would say, I am not okay. That's why I'm here today, because I'm not okay. I'm willing to look at some new ideas. And some of you would say, well, yeah, I think I am okay, actually. Things are okay. But I wonder, when we do the honest work of looking deep within ourselves, maybe then we see that actually we're not entirely okay. We need someone who can mend us, this split in us of value and fallibility. We need someone who can completely rework and transform us. So whoever you are, wherever you are, literally in the world, why don't you come on Alpha? 24th of February, Wednesday evening on Zoom. Why don't you come to that introductory evening and just find out what this is all about and see if it's something that's for you. There'll be no follow-up from us afterwards if you don't want it. There's no charge, there's no pressure. Just come along and see whether something really wonderful might happen. My friends Ross and Emma are going to lead us in our final song of worship just now. And I'd love you to consider using this song perhaps to consider the invitation that I've just given. Hey, after all, what have you got to lose?